Hello everyone, I hope you're all well and welcome to episode 74 of the James Layton Fitness Podcast. Now in today's episode we'll be discussing tips to help with hunger within a fat loss phase. So this is something I've discussed relatively recently on YouTube and Instagram. It's something I wanted to go into a little bit more detail on the podcast and also give you a few more tips as well, because on those platforms I only really gave one or two different tactics, whereas in this particular podcast I've got about 4 different strategies that should really help you. Now first you just need to take a step back and just appreciate that unfortunately there will be some hunger within a fat loss phase. It's just inevitable. Whenever you're going through a energy deficit over a period of time, there will be some hunger. However, there are certainly some strategies to help to deal with this, to help blunt this hunger, and ultimately to allow you to adhere to the plan much more successfully. Because I think it's a big thing. If you're hungry all the time, you've got a bigger tendency to go off the plan, to binge eat, to not adhere to the plan. But if you can have some effective strategies to help blunt hunger, this can really help with adherence. I think that's the real key factor we're trying to achieve here. So that's one of the things we'll be focusing on within the podcast. Now, one great strategy that will help with hunger is actually moving calories later in the day. So as I discussed on a lot of my other podcasts and a lot of my other content, we need to appreciate that in regards to fat loss, the real key to creating fat loss is creating that energy deficit at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the month, over a chronic period of time. As such, if you're splitting hairs over meal timings but you're not creating that energy deficit, you need to really consider what you're doing here, because we must create that energy deficit. Therefore, this allows you leeway to effectively consume foods when you like. There's not a particular time in the day if you ate something that would hinder your progress. It's not the case at all. It's all about the energy deficit over a prolonged period of time. Therefore, this allows you to move your calories later in the day potentially, and I would strongly suggest this because for most people are typically more hungry later in the day. So as such, by eating less at the start of the day and then saving a lot of your calories later in the day, this can really help blunt hunger, because you basically have more calories to consume when you are hungry. And as I just mentioned, it's all about meeting daily calorie and macronutrient targets. So if you can move more of your food later in the day and have more calories later in the day, as long as you stay within your daily protein, carbohydrate and fat and calorie targets, you're still going to create that energy deficit need for fat loss. So that probably is one of the biggest takeaways you can take away from this podcast, is moving more of your food intake later in the day. And this is something I do personally within a fat loss phase. This is something I suggest to a lot of my clients, and it really does help tremendously. So that's tip number one. The second tip I want to discuss is increasing your fibrous vegetable intake. As you probably know, fibrous vegetables are very high in fiber, and fiber helps to keep you fuller for longer. So as such, this can be a really great strategy for blunting hunger. But in addition to that, the great thing about lots of fibrous vegetables is they're very low in total calories in comparison to the volume of food. So therefore you can really fill your plate with lots of green vegetables without actually making a significant dent into your calorie and carbohydrate target. Therefore this can really help twofold: one with fiber, but also just psychologically allowing you to actually eat a greater volume of food without making a big dent into your calorie and carbohydrate figures is a really great tool. So I'd really strongly suggest consuming lots of fibrous vegetables with each meal, and this will really help tremendously. So that will be tip number 2 to try. Third tip I want you to think about is actually giving yourself enough time to reach your fat loss goals. You'll be surprised how often I see people start their fat loss phase with completely unrealistic expectations. They expect to lose a lot of weight within a short period of time. Now, it's not to say that it can't be done, but you're really setting yourself up for failure, because to achieve a great amount of weight loss in a short period of time, a couple of things need to be in place. You need to be in a very aggressive energy deficit, and as such, hunger will be much greater, and this will therefore mean adherence will probably not be as good, because you're more likely to binge. Second key thing is to think about is you're going to lose a lot of muscle mass by creating these aggressive energy deficits. again, which is not desirable. So make sure you're realistic with your fat loss expectations. Give yourself plenty of time. Focus on that 0.5 to 1% weight loss per week. And that's something I've discussed before, and that's a great rate of weight loss because that will allow you to maintain as much muscle mass as possible, but still consistently make fat loss progress. Next thing I want to talk about is something I haven't discussed before on Instagram or on YouTube, is to actually be sensible with your food choice. And this is similar to what I was saying with increasing your fibrous vegetable intake. Despite my comments previously about implementing a flexible approach to your nutrition, i.e. allowing yourself to have some processed food in moderation as long as you meet your daily calorie and macronutrient targets. It's important to know when you're in a fat loss phase, when you don't have that many calories to play with, you need to be sensible. And by that I mean is, don't choose foods that are very high in calories for their volume of food. So things like lots of sugar, or for example drinking your calories, you're not really getting the same satiation if you would do from choosing a food that has low calories compared to the volume of food. Now, as I mentioned before, with regards to sugar isn't bad like most people think. The problem with sugar is it's just devoid of any micronutrients, and as such it's really empty calories. Now, when you're at maintenance calories or when you're in a calorie surplus, you can allow more sugary foods within your daily intake because you have more calories to play with. But when you're in a position where you don't have many calories to play with, be sensible, because if you have a large amount of calories from sugar, even though you're still within your daily intake, you're going to be more hungry, and therefore, as I said before, adherence is likely to be less. So hopefully these tips have really helped. I know this is something I talk about with my clients a lot, is trying to implement these strategies to help blunt hunger as much as possible in the fat loss phase. As I mentioned, some hunger unfortunately is inevitable within the fat loss phase, but trying to implement some of these strategies and hopefully they'll help you adhere to the plan much better. Thank you very much for listening. I'll look forward to speaking to you next week. If you're still yet to download my free book, How to Set Up a Nutrition Plan, if you go to jameslayton.fitness.co.uk, you'll see a tab at the top of the page and you can download that ebook immediately. I'll look forward to speaking to you next week. Thank you very much.